This reading of Turn the Other Cheek sounds very similar to Martin Luther King Jr.'s Civil Disobedience. What's the connection there that we can learn from for our modern context?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is exactly what Wink is arguing. Is his phrase that he uses is nonviolent resistance. But in the context of the Roman Empire, civil disobedience is essentially the same kind of thing. I think this is really what we're talking about. Where that line is between nonviolent resistance, civil disobedience, and then violent resistance, I mean, that's what we all have to figure out. But I think the calling in this passage, in the work of Martin Luther, is to say the world can be better, but it only gets better if we make it. And we have to push, we have to put ourselves in uncomfortable positions, we have to lean into conflict when that's appropriate, but never crossing the line into fighting fire with fire, or returning evil with more evil. And that's the real trick of it. I think absolutely there's place for civil disobedience. I think absolutely we need to do nonviolent resistance to things. The trick for all of us is deciding, well, where does it cross the line into injuring someone, hurting them, creating violence in the world? But we're not here to help empire maintain its power over things. We are here to create new peace, new ways to think about it, new imaginations in ourselves and our neighbors. And sometimes that means confronting all of it. That's why I started tonight with that idea of conflict. Conflict's not bad if you deal with it well. You can learn from it and it can teach you something. Bobby, thoughts?
I have a bad habit, which is maybe a good habit, of whenever I open up the CBC News app, which I try to read regularly, check in on the news, is to notice how often there is, which is almost every time you're looking, an instance of domestic violence. And often in our city, absolutely in our country. And so doing the dance with this text is really, really important. And I think that a text like this has been used against many bodies, but particularly women's bodies, for centuries. And so what I want to say about that is you might not have all of the nuance of the great work that Jer pointed us to today in terms of things. There's got to be more here than it seems on the page. But I think when we're reading the text really carefully and honestly, we do have a sense that, like, if I just turn the other cheek as a woman in the world, I could lose my life. And if you start to think, like, is that really what Jesus is calling me to? And you think, I hope not, listen to that. Because you're probably more right than you know without all of that context. So I think that what it looks like to resist that violence is really, really important, but we have to think about it so, so carefully. And whenever I see those instances, which is daily in our news in this country, I like to think about how we all have made a world like that, a world where it is somehow acceptable that women lose their lives in the hands of the ones that were supposed to love them the most. And I love the gospel for the way that it calls us to love that serves, but doesn't take away your life, but gives you your life. So do the dance with these texts, but when you have a sense like, is this interpretation harmful to me? Jesus says, come to life in it. And the work of what that might look like is a work of our society. And let's continue to make a world like Jesus calls us to, which cares for all of us.
Awesome. Super important. And actually, Wink talked about that for the Jewish people. Like, fighting back against Rome is a death sentence. Mm-hmm. So they have to find ways to resist, but to do that thinking about their own self-preservation in that. It's actually a big part of one of his books in there, so thank you. Yeah. We'll grab one here.
With regard to non-hierarchical, non-abusive relationships, what are we called to do when the other party in the relationship doesn't understand what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
they don't buy these
Yeah.
ideas.
I think that's a little bit of what Bobby was leaning into. I think the really interesting thing is where this passage goes in the Lucan version of the passage. So do a plug for my book here, but it's free, so whatever. During Stardust, right after I talk about this section, I talk about where Jesus goes in the Lucan passage. And what he talks about is a continual separation and backing away from somebody. So if somebody is hating you, you can do good for them. You can be in their life. That's what it is. If they're saying bad things about you, you can say good things about them. If they hurt you, if they oppress you, you can pray for them. Like, there's just very clearly this, as they get worse, you refuse to become who they are, but you back away from them. You're not in their life anymore. You're not even saying good things about them anymore, but you're refusing to hate. You're refusing to wish bad things for them. So it is important because the whole point of this passage is not to allow people to do bad things. It's to say it's wrong. But there are some people who are they're not going to get the point. I don't think Jesus is convinced that if you turn the other cheek, the Roman Empire is going to let the Jewish people go. I think he's still saying we have to demonstrate that this is wrong and we have to stand up to it. But in the follow-up section in Luke, he talks in more personal contexts where it's fine to do your best to change somebody's mind. But if they're not doing that, it's also okay for you to step back and step back and step back without losing yourself to the kind of evil and the kind of hate that they're embodying for themselves. And that's a really tricky thing. When you've tried and you've tried and you've tried and that person won't change, it's pretty hard not to just go home and hope they get hit by a bus or something. And Jesus is saying, well, don't let them do that to you. They can do a lot of terrible things to you. Don't let them force you into someone you don't want to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bobby?
Yeah, I think it is a really important, like, where the rubber meets the road question, Tom. And I kind of want to steer us towards how important many, many, many relationships are in our lives. I think that this has been so essential to my health and becoming the person I'm really proud to be in the world, is collecting so many great relationships in lots of close and acquaintance and neighborhood-like ways, so that I have this sense of who I am and what it feels like to be treated like the person I want to be. And that has just been such a guiding force in my life, that when someone starts to, or I can even trace back maybe a more historical relationship in my life, I can think, man, all of these people treat me this way, and this relationship doesn't. And there are all these ways of holding that and wondering about it. But I think that we're at this really interesting time, again, like as a culture, as a society, where we put so much need on so few relationships that it becomes hard to know, like, who we even are and how we're supposed to be or we're meant to be treated in them. And so I would encourage us to continue to make new friends at all stages of our lives, wherever we are. Be open to that kind of connection and see yourself reflected back in those relationships, and begin to, like, build that memory for yourself of, like, this is what love feels like. This is what friendship feels like. This is what goodness feels like. And I know it because of all of these connections to my life. I don't know if I can know it without them. So that's how I want to answer that question. Build more friendships and get that sense that, like, if there's distance that's needed there, you can take it. And it could be healthy because no, all these other people treat me so wonderfully. This one isn't working, so I take a step away.
That's great. And actually, we did marriage stuff tonight. It wasn't really the point, but this is a huge marriage lesson. Your spouse cannot be everything that you need, like your best friend and your lover and your therapist. You know, like, you need all kinds of different relationships. That will actually help your long-term relationships, is understanding what that person can be to you, and then how you supplement that with a lot of other people around you. I know when you're young and you're dating, you're like, oh my God, this person's gonna be everything for me. They can be a lot, but we need all of that. But always like, that's really important.
I also wanna say that, like, yeah, I think the ways that I'm calling you to to collect all of those friendships, we also have to be ready to be letting some of those friendships go over time. And I think that we can sometimes carry quite a bit of shame over friendships that end, but to see the ways that people come into our lives and leave our lives, and to let that relationship flow happen throughout the course of your life, I think welcoming them and also releasing them is really important.
Awesome.